From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 10 o'clock news.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. As projected, President-elect Joe Biden makes plans for his administration. President Trump is pushing ahead with legal challenges to the election results. CBS's Natalie Brand has more.
President-elect Joe Biden says President Trump's refusal to concede is not slowing down his transition plans.
The fact that they're not willing to acknowledge we won at this point is not of much consequence in our planning and what we're able to do between now and January 20th.
President Trump has yet to accept defeat as his legal team pursues claims of voter fraud.
I just think it's an embarrassment, quite frankly. How can I say this tactfully? I think it will not help the president's legacy.
Vice President Mike Pence met with Republican senators on Capitol Hill Tuesday. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says there's time to investigate the president's allegations before the election is certified.
I don't think we're going to have an interrupted transition to whoever is the next administration. I think we ought to quit all the hand-wringing and not act like this is extraordinary.
Here in Wilmington, Delaware, President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris turned their attention Tuesday to the latest challenge to the Affordable Care Act, now before the Supreme Court.
What do we do? Stand up, fight back!
Justices heard oral arguments on the constitutionality of the landmark health care law. Based on their questions, a majority of the justices gave hints to suggest the ACA should not be struck down in its entirety.
See this case for what it is. A blatant attempt to overturn the will of the people.
Senator Harris said she and Biden ran on a promise to keep the law in place. The High Court is expected to issue a ruling sometime in the spring. Natalie Brand, CBS News, Wilmington, Delaware.
And we'll have more on the Affordable Care Act and what it may mean for millions of Americans later in the newscast, depending on how the Supreme Court rules. Well, going into last week's election in Montana, most public polls had shown the big statewide races were relatively close, with Republicans having a slight edge. But the final outcome had GOP candidates winning by decisive margins up and down the ticket. So how did so many polls miss the mark here in Montana? Mike Dennison takes a closer look.
Most polls had Montana's U.S. Senate contest between Senator Steve Daines and Governor Steve Bullock a statistical toss-up, and the same for the U.S. House race. They also said President Trump and Republican gubernatorial candidate Greg Gianforte were leading, but only by single digits. Yet not one of those races was decided by less than 10 points, with winning margins anywhere from 60,000 to 100,000 votes. University of Montana political scientist Rob Seldine says one reason for the disconnect may be that Trump supporters don't like responding to polls.
People who support Donald Trump are less likely to take those calls and to agree to participate in the poll because they see it as another one of these elite institutions that's biased against them and their president, part of the fake media, this whole narrative.
But another possible factor is the record voter turnout last week, which saw tens of thousands of new voters, many of them younger.
Those people are the least likely to respond to most polls. They're the ones who showed up. So they didn't show up in the polls, and they did show up in terms of voting.
And it appears they favored Republicans. Some pollsters, however, didn't miss the spread. Emerson Polling from Boston polled Montanans in early October and had Daines winning by 9 points. He won by 10. And Gianforte and Trump each winning by 13 points. They won by 12 and 17, respectively. Emerson used only text messages to cell phones and says it felt it had a good, accurate sample of Montana voters. Republican pollster Eric Iverson of Missoula also told MTN News some polls didn't properly account for the partisan makeup of Montana voters, which is increasingly Republican. He says his polls for the Daines campaign figured Republicans outnumbered Democrats by anywhere from 11 to 14 points in Montana, and his polls never had Daines trailing Bullock. Pollsters agree that partisan alignment of voters is becoming a dominant factor, and maybe that's the simple reason that a big turnout means big Republican victories in Montana.
There are just a lot more Republicans in Montana than there are Democrats, and so if you have a higher turnout, well, that might very well mean that you just are turning out more Republicans who, for whatever reason, haven't chosen to vote in the past.
So when almost everyone votes in Montana, Republicans win. If that's true, Democrats may have a long road back to competitiveness in Montana politics. Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
Last week's voter turnout was 81%, and the number of people who voted broke the old record by more than 94,000 voters. Governor-elect Greg Gianforte has unveiled a 21-member task force to help him respond to the surge of COVID-19 cases, which set another record today. The task force includes healthcare experts, business leaders, school officials, and local and tribal leaders. It also has the current head of Governor Bullock's coronavirus task force, Montana Adjutant General Matthew Quinn. Other members include Montana Chamber of Commerce President Todd O'Hare, owners of hotels and restaurants, and the U.S. Attorney for Montana, Kurt Alme. Billings residents include Dr. Heidi Duncan, medical director at the Billings Clinic, and Steve Walrick, the owner of the Clock Tower Inn and Stella's, and also Randy Swenson, owner of the Tenderness Assisted Living. Shirley Schieffer, president of the Montana Parent Teachers Association, also from Billings, a member of the task force. The governor-elect says his top priority will be to protect the most vulnerable Montanans, while also safely and fully opening back up the state economy. Well, the state did report more than 1,100 new confirmed cases of coronavirus today, a new record. However, due to a computer change, some of those numbers are not necessarily from the last 24 hours. State health authorities also reported 6 more COVID-19 related deaths. 3 of those victims in Cascade County, 2 from Roosevelt County, 1 from Marr County. MTN News now reports a total of 490 deaths. Well, COVID-19 outbreaks are forcing more and more Montana students into remote learning. In the Bitterroot Valley up in Columbia Falls, and the entire Great Falls School District will be going remote starting next week. Here in Billings, the superintendent is now asking for more substitute help to keep in-person classes moving forward. Q2's Mitch Legge brings us more.
Billings School District 2 has been feeling the effects of COVID-19. This week, an additional elementary school-aged classroom had to be placed into quarantine. On Tuesday, the superintendent sent a call to the substitute teacher community, asking them to take the jobs when asked to help keep schools open. Superintendent Greg Upham said the biggest threat to keeping classrooms open is having an abundance of substitute teachers in the case of regular teachers being placed into quarantine. The pay for substitute teachers has been raised with the help of federal coronavirus relief money. A non-certified staff member will earn $125 a day, and a certified staff member will earn $150 a day. Upham said the pay raise did help attract more substitutes, but many times daily positions still go unfilled. Schools across the state are closing classrooms and buildings because of COVID-19, including schools in Stevensville, Canyon Creek School District near Billings, and a closure is scheduled for the Great Falls schools later this week.
When you look across the state or even across the country, you know, the number one issue that probably puts schools from live instruction into a remote instruction or closed is not having the appropriate staff. And we've been short-staffed in schools. We've been able to weather the storm, so to speak. In some cases, we've had students that have had to sit in our foyer areas and stuff like that because we hadn't had enough teachers, and so it makes it challenging.
With the holiday season fast approaching, Upham said there will not be any mandated quarantine period for students who traveled out of state for the holidays. In Billings, Mitch Legge, MTN News.
Thanks, Mitch. And for more information about how to become a substitute teacher, you can find this story on ktvq.com. Well, despite the pandemic, it's a big weekend for local sports. Central and Laurel will meet in the State A football championship game for the first time ever, while West will host rival Bozeman with a title berth on the line. But as Q2's Casey Conlon reports, most fans won't be able to watch either game in person.
This weekend is one of the biggest on the Montana high school sports calendar. We'll see perhaps 2 of the best football games of the season in Billings between 2 sets of rivals that normally draw thousands of fans each. But if you're thinking you'll go down to Dallas or Lockwood on a whim, think again. COVID-19 gathering limits dictate that if you aren't on the list, you're not getting in. Yellowstone County hasn't allowed public walk-ups at all this year. Instead, players and staff are given a certain number of tickets each, for which they must submit names beforehand to be checked at entrance gates. Last month, the MHSA announced a maximum of 6 tickets per player would be allowed, plus 4 tickets each for coaches and 2 each for up to 12 cheerleaders. However, there will be no student sections and no pep bands. These are the exact guidelines Central and Laurel are going by Saturday, as approved by the County Health Office. But School District 2 has been more strict this season, only allowing 2 tickets to everybody. And SD2 Activities Director Mark Wall says that won't change for this Friday's game. Even though they are technically allowed more, Wall says this rule has worked well all year and won't be changed, especially with continually increasing COVID numbers in Yellowstone. For those headed to state volleyball tournaments this weekend in Sydney, Shelby, and Malta, check with your school about how many tickets per player each site is allowing. It has to be at least 2, but won't be any more than 6. So the casual fans will likely be stuck watching from home. We'll, of course, have all your highlights of every big match and game on MTN and MontanaSports.com. Casey Conlon for MTN News.
All right, thanks, Casey. And those 2 big games this weekend, West and Bozeman, Friday night at 7. Well, Laurel and Central will battle it out for the title. That'll be Saturday at 1 o'clock in Lockwood. All right, turning to Chief Forecaster Bob McGuire. Winter certainly has gotten off to a fast start, an early jump on us this year. How much snow have we seen so far?
Well, we've seen a little bit here in the Billings area. I think we're up to, I'm trying to remember, I think it's about 15, 20 inches so we're doing all right. Let me show you what's going to happen here. Take a look at this. As you can see, the snowfall continues to push its way down from Canada tonight, making its way in towards the Billings area. It's a little cold front that's moving through. It's what's going to happen. It'll just kind of blow on through. We might see a few flurries out of this. And so the National Weather Service has issued a winter weather advisory for western Montana. Could see 1 to 3 inches of snow in the valleys and maybe 4 to 6 inches of snow up in the higher elevations. Now we have a winter storm warning for around the Missoula area. Could see 4 to 8 inches of snow there. Also over in Yellowstone National Park, looking for a winter weather advisory for about 3 to 8 inches in some of that area. Also in the southwest corner of the park, could see as much as a foot of snow in that area. But here in the Billings area, we're looking at maybe just some flurries as that next system moves through. Not very much, and we'll have more about that coming your way in a few more minutes. Russ?
All right, thank you, Bob. With temperatures dropping and the coronavirus still causing strain on the economy, the Montana Low-Income Energy Assistance Program wants people to know that they are here to help. Anyone who lives in Montana is eligible for the Low-Income Energy Assistance Program. The program is federally funded through the Department of Health and Human Services and offers financial assistance for anyone struggling to pay their heating or cooling costs. Now, the program typically serves around 20,000 households across the state of Montana.
More people that apply shows that there's need and will be more funding in years to come. All of our LEAP clients need to have safe and adequate heat. So if one of our LEAP clients has a problem with their heating system, it just doesn't turn on one day, if they call our office, we can send a technician out to repair or replace that heating system to get it back online, and we'll provide them with temporary heat.
The Low-Income Energy Assistance Program is open to households that meet income requirements. For example, under $25,000 for one person or $48,500 for a family of 4. And those who receive SNAP benefits or other forms of assistance may qualify automatically. Well, Glacier, Yellowstone, and all the national parks across the U.S. are saluting our veterans. The Department of Interior says, starting today, actually, the entrance fees for national parks will be permanently waived for veterans and Gold Star families. They'll no longer have to pay to visit a national park. The department already waives fees for active duty military. And due to the COVID-19 pandemic, there are no known public Veterans Day ceremonies planned here in the Billings area tomorrow. Well, still ahead on tonight's MTN 10 o'clock news here on Q2, millions of Americans could be in jeopardy of losing health care as the latest attempt to get rid of the Affordable Care Act made its way to the Supreme Court today. And it's almost time to hit the slopes. We're going to let you know what you can expect if you're planning on heading up to Big Sky this winter.